Hi everyone, Shanawa here from the Redeem family, and I'm jumping on again to answer a new question. And that is, how does narcissism show up in families? How do I know that my family dynamic might have been narcissistic when I was growing up? And there are several indicators for that. And one is if you had strict, controlling parents and they never apologized for anything. So they were clearly wrong. And instead of apologizing, saying, you know what, mommy, daddy was wrong when we did X, Y, and Z, they will pretend like nothing happened or come to you and just basically change the subject, but there's no addressing of the issue. They may even buy you something or change their tone a little bit, and that lets you know that they know that there was a problem, but they'll never apologize. Another one is triangulation. So there are three people, A, B, and C. If person A has a problem with person B in the family, they won't go to person B. They'll go to person C and start talking about person B. Like, can you believe that they did this, this, and this? And so then person C is pulled into the conflict unnecessarily. Then they start talking about B behind their back. And so anyway, it just never becomes a thing where people address each other. They say things maybe in a passive, aggressive, sarcastic way, a roundabout way, but there's never any comfort of coming and bringing issues to the table. It's always going around. So that's triangulation. Another one is abuse behind closed doors. If you had parents who were, when you would come home and you just would have that sense that the frustration is being taken out on you, but yet when you're in public, they're like this version of parent you've never seen before. Like, oh my gosh, I just love my kids. And people are like, you're such a good mom or dad. And they're just so loving in a way that they aren't behind closed doors. That's another indicator. Gaslighting is another one where you might try to tell your truth at some point, maybe as a child, maybe even as an adult later on. And instead of the parent listening and maybe owning up to any responsibility in the matter, did that really happen? Maybe you're being a little too sensitive. Well, I don't remember that. I've blocked a lot out from the past. Maybe you should just get over it, kind of thing. That's gaslighting. Another indicator of a family with narcissistic dynamics, favoritism. If you have there's clearly a favorite child in the family, and that child can do no wrong, and then you got a child who basically does a lot right. You know, the chores, they're obedient, all those kinds of things, but yet they can do no right in the family's eyes. That sets up a competition between siblings, and that competition and that favoritism is indicative of a narcissistic family dynamic. Another thing is people-pleasing or weak-willed kids. So we tend to think of obedient children as, oh, that's a good thing. They're so well raised. And obedience is one thing, but compliance, total blind compliance, is another thing entirely. And so if you have children who jump at being compliant, that's actually not a good thing, because they'll grow up to be compliant adults who may find themselves with other adults who want to enforce their will on them. Anyway, that tendency to be like that and not to speak up for themselves or have a voice or even have preferences for anything, that's an indicator that they didn't have a voice growing up at home. And so that people-pleasing nature can be a sign of a narcissistic family dynamic. Another thing is if you see similar patterns repeating themselves in every generation, that can also be an indicator. You have a dominant mom or dad with a more mild-mannered mom or dad, and you see that in every generation, that can also be a dynamic, an indicator of that dynamic. So this is how narcissistic family dynamics show up and present themselves in families.